You're listening to Forward Faster, bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs.
Hello and welcome to Luminate podcast, powered by Forward Faster NextCore. And we are here today with Dr. Jose Pozo, Chief Technical Officer of Optica, as we are wrapping up the Optica Frontiers in Optics and Laser Science Conference. Welcome, Jose.
Thank you very much for having me here, Sujatha. I'm in Rochester, the capital of optics in the United States. It is awesome to be here. You know, this is the place where Optica was born.
I know that. This is the birthplace of many great things in optics. And so we are excited to have you join us here today. On the subject of entrepreneurs, I'd love to hear your take on it, because we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs coming from all over the world with different ideas and different emerging technologies. And you see everything globally. So would you like to comment a little bit on entrepreneurship in a worldwide sense and some of the interesting trends that you're seeing in the world of entrepreneurship?
So when people say that I am the Chief Technology Officer of Optica, people very often they ask me, what does it mean? I'm not sure what it means. What it means is that I had to build a global industry network. And a global industry network means that any company, regardless of where they are, should find potential partners, suppliers, customers, investors, and talent in Optica. That's what I do. I talk to each company individually and find ways for them to connect with our other 370 corporate members or 24,000 individual members. So many of them are startups. In any industry association, small companies will, by definition, always find more value. So constantly I talk to startups, and very often at very early stage. And what I really see in the last years is that there is a lot of money, maybe sometimes too much money, in early stage research, and with money comes pressure to put things in the market very quickly. For example, one big trend that is at this moment going on is everybody's talking about quantum technologies, especially quantum computing. In the last years, there was some of the best research worldwide was put in quantum technologies. University of Bristol, MIT, were examples of places where the idea of having a photonic-enabled quantum computer was a very unrealistic promise, in my opinion, in the short term. But the money was there, the money was coming, and the ideas that companies like PsiQuantum could actually have a process with global foundries that could be seen as a stepping stone, well, everybody wanted to be in there. And I think now there is a point in which we need to educate not only the startups, but also the investors that are putting the money in the startups and telling them about the realistic time to market. It is, that's for me one of the biggest trends when it comes to entrepreneurs. It is happening that the money is there, and money calls for money, and investors are putting unrealistic pressure on time to market of technologies. Another one that we are seeing is whenever startups come to us, very often they come with very interesting ideas. For example, one of them came with a very interesting meta lens design for making a very efficient flat optics. And they were doing the manufacturing with deep UV lithography. And the first thing that we asked them is how you secure your supply chain. And they're like, no, but this is standard semiconductor manufacturing process. And we told them, but you know how to actually get into the semiconductor manufacturing process supply chain. It is not as easy as it is to just book a slot in a manufacturing center or in global foundries. It doesn't work like that. And it is something that they don't really understand, especially in today's semiconductor shortage issue, how it is to have something that it may look like semiconductor compatible and having it really put into production. And that's another major trend that we are seeing that I think the Luminate program is doing a spectacular work on, which is to help the companies really define what it is to have a well-secure supply chain for the future. Another major trend that we are seeing in this moment, the field of silicon photonics is booming. Silicon photonics for datacom, telecom, for both transceivers as well as optical switches is something that is already in the market, in volume production. So many other companies are seeing silicon photonics as a major opening for other applications. In the last year, we saw many companies investing heavily in silicon photonics-based LiDAR for automotive, and many of them actually did something fantastic. Some of the audience knows about the company Blackmore, acquired by Aurora, and others they know maybe about Luminate, investing heavily on having a silicon photonic-based FNCW LiDAR and acquiring Freedom Photonics for that. Things have been moving very fast on that direction, which of course other companies said, oh, they can do a LiDAR, maybe they can do something else. So many new applications are coming, and that is something that we are very excited about because the supply chain for silicon photonics is secured. TSMC and Global Foundries have already processes that enable the volume production, and lots of foundries in a small and medium volume are actually already offering every single tool at affordable price for the companies. And whenever a company comes to us with a new idea on silicon photonics, either if it's biosensing or if it is a readout for a fiber sensor, we get normally super excited. This is a good trend for us to go. I could talk about this for hours and hours. There's one thing more. Lately, we are getting lots of ideas for the medical market. And that is one major trend that we need assistance in the world with that, because when a company comes to us with a solution for the medical market, we understand the difficulty of the regulations on that. There is a company that is developing a next generation endoscopic camera based on fiber sensors. It is a minimally invasive technology, but it is invasive. So they have a very strong regulatory path towards that. And there is not really, worldwide, there are not really a place in which companies can really be assisted through this very difficult path and this FDA approval.
It's interesting you should say that because New York State has these programs like Luminate. I think they're looking towards establishing one in clinical and medical sciences. And we had a discussion around what is the most critical things that you can offer startups in med tech, in pharma, and biotech. And one of the things that we said is that assistance, that clinical path. And I've come from a clinical background, right? I've gotten things through FDA. Even with that background, you almost always end up at a clinical research organization, which is very expensive. So if New York State puts this piece together, it will give companies a place to go that, like Luminate works on supply chain and semiconductor and stuff, that they will work on the clinical aspects of it with them. But you're right. If you develop something outside of a university medical institution, it's very difficult to get the collection of expertise in one spot.
The problem also is long. And the length, exactly. The length and the burning rate during this time is too long it's a too long valley of death. And that's what has very often made these startups being killed.
Pharma is a little easier, I think, because they get purchased, not because it's a long and arduous path, but if they have these two molecules look fantastic, then, Roche is probably going to buy you or something.
As a major trend, I have seen that there are new technologies for short-wave infrared and mid-wave infrared detectors. The idea of having a broad area camera. There's a company that is being set in Belgium. It's called Thirfleece. And these guys, what they do is they have a layer that is put on the top of an infrared detector, and they manage to increase the bandwidth of response, covering from shortwave to long-wave infrared. They went to this event that happened last week in France called Invest in Photonics. They presented the pitch. And then the first question came from a couple of pharmaceutical companies. They were saying, well, this looks really, really exciting, really interesting. But we already had these kind of cameras in line. They say, well, it would be cheaper. I say, well, cheaper, it doesn't matter because for us, it would be expensive because we need to remove the ones that we already have. And that is something that happens a lot with the pharmaceutical companies. Unless you bring something very new to them.
Very novel. And
if it's something that is just cheaper, they say, well, we already have a solution already in place.
But don't you think that, that's in business in general, when companies come to me and say their only advantage is price, it always makes me a little nervous because price can move for a lot of reasons. And not that price isn't important, but if that is the single advantage a company brings, it's a precarious one. So I want to ask you a different question. You had an end-user workshop, and tell me a little bit about it, because I heard the buzz off of that was very exciting.
Thank you very much for asking about the end-user workshop. This is very exciting for us. So I came up with the idea of having a conference in which speakers don't tell us what they have, but tell us what they need. And then having the audience answering those needs. When I came up with this idea, I pitched it to many people, and they told me that I was crazy. It's not the first time that happened to me in my life, so I got used to it. They said, no, here in the US, we're not going to disclose our needs in front of our competition. Jose, that's not going to happen. This is something that was going to put in trouble. And I said, well, you have to disclose what you want to disclose. You don't have to put specifications on the table, but you have to show openness to collaboration. Because openness to collaboration doesn't damage your company, the opposite. It actually gives a very good feeling that you are open to start new things and you're open to contribute to this all optics community. And with that idea, yesterday we have a first of many. We had 10 companies presenting, some of them as well known as Light Matter, funded by Google Ventures. Others new ones like microscopic company Ramona Optics. We had different kind of companies that were telling us what they need. And we had people there answering those needs. And the feedback afterwards was that the workshop was 2 hours long. Well, then we had a reception that lasted another 2 hours. Many people told us that they made more leads in those 2 hours than in the entire conference for 4 days. And it shows me that this is the path forward. So with that feedback, I can already announce everyone that every time you go to an Optica conference, whether it is the big ones, OFC or Clio, or when it's the smaller ones, like could be biophotonics or laser, there will always be an end-user workshop, so you always look for it. It is targeted to industry, and it is targeted to people who try to find ways to contribute, to collaborate.
I think that's pretty exciting. I mentioned that we do something very much small scale here. We call it fast pitch. You have 3 slides. You tell me what you are, what you do in the market you serve, and what is the biggest problem you need help with. And pitch all of these local companies, and somebody in there can help you. Somebody in that room can help you, and it's a business agreement. So I love what you're doing because it's that little nugget that we do, but it's really like big. And I'm excited. I'm hoping that we can participate with that.
Let me tell you a secret here, Sujatha, and all of you podcast listeners. We contacted 400 companies to get 10 speakers. It was really a lot of work. It was worth it. I just hope that for the next ones, because many people that were yesterday there, they are going to tell other people the kind of thing, the kind of spirit that is happening. So it will be easier. But for us, it was a big investment. And it was, I think, totally worth it. The idea that we can really change a bit how close companies are in terms of looking for cooperation and collaboration.
I think that the optics community, at least my experience has been, it is a very collaborative community. People want each other's businesses to succeed. I think Liz Rogan said on stage that, what is it, like 90% or 80% of optics companies have less than 100 employees. And they're doing quite well, but you can't live unless you work with other companies then. Either you have to become Google or you have to be collaborative. So I really respect what you're doing.
I always consider that the fact that this is a landscape dominated by small companies also shows that this is a technology for the future. And that gets me very excited. I am from the south of Spain. My city is called Almeria. It's in a desert. I go there in the middle of the desert. I take my phone, I connect with 5G, and I can order groceries and have them delivered to my grandma on that day. And we don't still get regularly scanned for cancer. This is the world in which we live in. We have been investing in telecommunications heavily because the market was there. And there is still so many other challenges that our photonic industry can solve. And now it comes a time in which we really have to understand what is the next stage of photonics and optics. What are the next problems that we can solve? Because luckily we had the telecom money that made the photonics technology very mature to solve any other challenges. Now all of us as a community, we need to decide where to go next. The community also includes the investors. The investors actually are driving the community for many years, telling us what is next. I am very excited about the biosensors that are going to be soon incorporated into wearables. Biosensors that are going to not only monitor glucose, but also monitor many biomarkers and in advance tell people about future conditions that they're going to have. I'm also very, very happy about the ideas of having more cameras in our mobile phones that can actually image our skin and detect early possible future diseases. I'm extremely excited about breath analyzers. Breath analyzers based on quantum cascade lasers are detecting at least 200 biomarkers that can actually tell us what kind of not only cancer but other diseases we're going to have in the future. And this is technologies that are going to change the world. And the fact that we are dominated by small companies, that also means that they are agile, that they can adapt to any new needs that come into the market.
I think it's really exciting. So I'm going to ask you one question, which I think about a lot, and that is the role of organizations like Optica and other not-for-profits in ensuring that the industry matures. Like as you said, huge amounts of money put into R&D, core R&D, and that level. Corporate expenditure is pretty high, but there is this space between I've got this really brilliant idea in my lab to I have a functioning business. And I want to get your view on what the role of organizations like yours and mine are in curating that technology so that it then becomes viable for use.
I always like to put clear examples. So I'm going to start with one clear example. Yesterday, you had a company presenting at the Luminate Awards, a company from Spain, like me, a company called Optics. And that company, I really like the idea how that company started. Their CEO, Barbara Boades, during her PhD, in her setup, she needed an optical element. She needed a piece of optics. So she had to start with her research to find that optical element. It took her 2 months to compare all the different providers, suppliers, contact them, send them samples until she could find it. And then she realized that 2 months in a PhD is an eternity. And she could not understand how other people would go through the same trouble. And she made it a business, the business of comparing different suppliers, like the booking.com of optics, but the idea that you could actually compare all the different suppliers, and there are many, and get the right optical element. I met Barbara 3 years ago. I saw her again yesterday after Luminate Awards, and then I tell her, so what do you want to do with Meet Optics? And she said, no, this is not optics anymore. Optics could be very limited. We want to incorporate lasers, detectors, systems. We want to have a place in which any company, not only universities, but any company that want to define a supply chain can define the best possible supply chain. And that got me excited. So I went to say, which other companies can help this kind of business? There is another company in Switzerland called Pandao. And Pandao, what they do is they go to the extreme. They deliver a software that can actually define the supply chain of any optical element, including the price depending on its volume. And that company could match exactly what Meet Optics does and then say, okay, not only the customer can define what optical element they need, but also what would be the lead time, the production time, and the cost that they could as a supplier. This kind of partnerships is what I believe is the real role of an industry association. We really want to do the networking that companies cannot easily do themselves. And they cannot easily do themselves because their job is to focus on their company. Our job, the industry association work, is to focus on the overall picture, the overall industry. But to do that, you really have to think global, but at the same time also act local. The team that I lead at Optica is a team of people who are traveling constantly. They're not just listening to presentations or seeing PowerPoints, but visiting the companies, understanding exactly what they do, and then see what other companies they can interact with. Many people think that industry associations are event organizers, that the role is to organize a large conference. No, I go to every conference, not only the Optica ones, and I do a lot of business and big conferences worldwide. But our role is not to organize a conference, that's the means. The goal is to really make those connections, those interactions, those matchmaking that will lead to success. And very often, our job finishes when the two people from two companies have given each other a handshake. They shake hands, then we run away. And we run away with a big smile.
Well, that's outstanding. So I am going to wrap up our conversation, first of all, with a handshake between the two of us, because I think that we will work well together. So it is a pleasure to have Jose with us. And I'd like to invite people who are listening to this podcast to follow optica.org. They're doing some amazing work. And follow luminate.org. If you have a startup company that's trying to figure out what to do in optics, check us out. Our application window is open. And check out Optica, because the resources that they offer optics companies is unparalleled.
Thank you very much, Sujatha, for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.